What's going on YouTube? JT is Reborn here, and welcome back to another edition of my DC comic book reviews. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Batman Detective Comics, issue number 1070. And this one is written by Ram V, of course, back up by Simon Spurrier. Stefano Raphael, I think, is the artist in this one, and then you have somebody else on the backup as well. But yes, this is continuing the Orkham storyline, which has kind of had its ups and downs, I'd say personally. Some issues are more interesting than others. I kind of like some of the stuff with Two-Face the most. But this issue, I don't really feel like there's been too much plot progression that happens this time around. It feels like once we start to get going, then it kind of drags out a little bit. And I'm sort of losing interest in the overall story. Some of it's kind of interesting, like I said before, but a lot of the stuff feels like, okay, here's introducing these characters that'll show up in another one of Ram V's books coming up, like the Vigil. They show up out of nowhere, randomly, just, like I said, completely at random, out of the blue, and then they're just kind of thrown into this, and then they're like, we'll be back in the Vigil number 1 coming May. Okay, then, didn't really feel like it was necessary for the story, but maybe it will be down the road. I don't know. But yeah, so I'll talk about the positives first. The artwork is pretty solid for the most part. Not the strongest I've seen in this current run, but I still think fine overall. There's various things going on here, like we find out that Solomon Grundy, who was teased at the end of the last issue. We also have Cheshire Cat, which is Leanne Harper, who still has not seen her dad yet. I wonder when she will at some point. But as you know, like, he's actually kind of immune to the Azmer stuff. So it doesn't really affect him, so he won't get turned into a werewolf or anything like that. And then him and Cheshire Cat kind of become sort of friends in here, and they're trying to find their way out of this situation. That's one element going on there. Then we got the stuff with Bruce, and he's kind of reminiscing about his life and all the stuff that's been going on, bits of the nightmares. And then you have Arzan Orkham shows up briefly to kind of talk about some stuff. He goes into a little bit of the history of his family and that, but that's still kept kind of vague. Batman's out there. He goes and does stuff to do some more investigating, runs into Talia, of course, and she hands him this drink, which is, you know, got like this pink sting going from it, but she makes sure to emphasize, okay, it's not poison, not drugged or anything, so go ahead and drink this up. Let me tell you a little bit of the story about the Orkham family and the Al Ghuls and their connection to, because they obviously had a connection to Ra's al Ghul, which we learned very briefly about, and then it's kind of cut short, and then we show up at the clock tower with these, the Vigil characters. They were shown briefly in like one of the Lazarus Planet tie-ins that I covered on the channel at some point. I can't remember which one. But this issue basically says, hey, guess what? We're coming into our own little issue there. Just literally, that's how the issue ends. Hey, be sure to read the Vigil number 1 this May. Okay, cool, but like the main, I feel like nothing all that much happened in this particular issue. It felt like the plot's not really progressing too much. We had Cheshire Cat briefly running into Solomon Grundy, so I guess there's going to be an alliance there. We had Bruce just kind of having some of the same conversations I feel like we've gone over a couple times in this series at this point. Briefly with Arzan, that's about it. He has a conversation with Talia, and as soon as we start to learn it, we get kind of cut off with Barbara Gordon at the clock tower, and it's just the Vigil characters show up briefly because they're going to be appearing in another book, but was it really necessary this issue? Did we really need them in here? Are they going to be a big factor in the storyline going forward, or is it just to set up briefly for their Vigil book? Because otherwise it just, I don't know, it just, with the whole Orkham storyline, I don't really think we needed all this extra stuff kind of thrown in there. That's just me. Maybe the next issue will be better, but it's kind of losing momentum for me. And then we had the backup, which is just really weird and bizarre. I actually liked the last month's backup a little bit more than this issue's. It's just that girl who Mr. Freeze obviously tried to freeze to see if there was any sort of brain damage or that going on with his whole cryogenics process. You had some weird spirit thing come in, and then you have that really bizarre character who keeps popping up in all these backups. Goes by the name Sorrow. She even calls him a goth himbo, and then that's kind of where it ends with Mr. Freeze showing up. She's still alive. What is the point of all this? It just, I don't know. It didn't really work for me, this particular issue. I don't know what it was, but maybe I'm just kind of losing interest in all the stuff that's going on in this current story arc. Maybe I need to go back and reread some of it, but because it started out kind of strong. But now with this whole operatic thing with the Orkhams and all that, I'm just wanting waiting for some more interesting and exciting stuff to happen, but it's just not happening right now. I don't know. Like, this just feels kind of off for a Batman story. I don't know what it is. Like, there were some kind of cool moments with the supernatural stuff going on before, with the Batman fighting werewolves and Mr. Freeze and Two-Face being thrown in there, but without really Two-Face this issue, which that feels like we're kind of brushing that aside and moving on to other things. I don't know. The Orcams haven't been all that interesting as antagonists this time around. In some instances, like, it's kind of fun to go into a bit of a different era, but like, as a story with these characters, like, I feel like I don't really know them. They're not so well defined or exciting enough to really remember. That's kind of the downside of this particular story arc, and I don't know how long this thing's going to go on for, but for the Orcams as villains, I just wish there was a little bit more of an interesting story going on here. The only one who kind of seemed memorable was the guy who turned into a werewolf, because, well, he turns into a werewolf. At least that's something, and he's a little bit more brutal and stuff, but I wish they were a little bit more excitable in terms of villains, but they're just kind of there. Like, if this were like an episode of something, I'd just kind of skim through it, like if I was doing a rewatch or whatever, like, oh yeah, this story arc, so I don't know, we get, like, between Batman and Detective Comics, it's kind of a weird state for Batman. I mean, it's not downright awful or terrible or anything like that, but this issue, I don't know, it's just, there's something kind of missing with this storyline. Maybe it's just because it's kind of dull right now. I want something a little bit more excitable with the story going forward. Hopefully the next issue promises that, because as it stands, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with this issue. I didn't really care for it all too much. I'm just kind of whatever on it, and that's not really something I want to feel when I'm reading a Batman comic. I want to have something a little bit more excitable, but when something's just whatever, it's just not doing it for me. So there you go. Those are my quick thoughts on this particular issue. And the backup, like, what's even the point of it at this point? Just cut the backups out of these storylines and just save $1. That's my stance right now with a lot of these backups in DC Comics. Just cut them all out. They're not really doing much anymore. And unless you do like a real exciting story, like the last backup I liked was the Maps Mizuguchi one, and that had nothing to do with it. It was just a fun little story. Or when they did the setup for the Robin book. But other than that, I just don't think we need these backups anymore. Cut them out, save $1, and just focus on the main story and make it a little bit more excitable. I know Ram V has written some good stuff. I like the Catwoman run a lot more than this Detective Comics one, so I'm hoping that the momentum picks up or something. But as of right now, it's just kind of not fully hitting the mark for me personally. But maybe it is for you. If it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content, all that other fun stuff. And yeah, that's it for right now. I think the next thing I gotta talk about is Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #2. And that'll be it for the DC comic book reviews for this particular week. And then I'll get to some other stuff, and we'll pick up the pace more next week and all that fun stuff. So that's all I gotta say. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.